Hey y'all, welcome back to episode 15 of the Late Night Vision Show. I am Hans, and as always, I've got Jason with me here. Welcome, Jason. How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing good. How are you tonight, Hans?
I'm doing great. I was going to say, the good-looking one of the group.
Well, you know what they say, I've got a face for radio, so you know.
Face for radio. Hey, I like that.
Yeah,
I think maybe that's why we're doing well with this
I think
podcast thing,
so. That's right. Well, look, I tell you what, we had a great show last week. It was one of my favorite shows. It has officially been one of the most listened to shows we've done in that first week period. It was shared all over Facebook, Instagram. It made the circles, and we've had a lot of great feedback. And I just want to say thank you so much to James O'Neill from O'Neill Ops for doing that interview with us. He was a super guest. I learned a bunch. We could have talked to him for another hour, and I think we're definitely going to have him back on.
Yeah, I'll tell you, what a humble guy too, for a man that's done a lot. Not just done a lot as far as with what he's doing with YouTube and,
right,
and all the coyotes that he's taken off his property, but helping other landowners, ranchers, farmers in South Dakota be able to take care of the predator problem on their land by helping with some of the caliber regulations and night vision regulations, and really spearheading that in the state Congress, and getting that taken care of. So man, what a super guy, very, very humble, and it was a joy to have on the show. So I hope to have him on again, and he said he wants to be on again soon, so we'll probably have him back in the fall.
Yeah, it was a great show. And so anybody that is listening or watching this podcast now, and if you haven't heard that, go back and pull that one from last week and watch that or listen to it, because I'm telling you, it was a great episode. Anyway, I had a lot of fun with it.
Right. All right. So, this week we're going to be talking about, and a lot of people call you, Jason, about what we're about to talk about. A lot of people ask me about using this out in the field. But the question is, when I'm out hunting, whether it's coyote or hog hunting, predator hunting, do I need a thermal monocular or a night vision monocular when I'm out on the field? Is it something that I need to put into my bag of gear?
Yeah.
And that's I think it's an important thing. You and I have used it for a long time now. You've used them for a long time, and you deal a lot in it. So why don't you do this? Let's break those different monoculars out into different groups, and briefly talk about some of them, and then talk about our own experience with
it. Well, I think this is going to be a good topic, because it is something that I know I get daily on the phone from customers and potential customers that are asking, what about a handheld? Do I need a handheld? And a lot of guys, especially if you're new to thermal or just traditional night vision hunting, any type of night hunting, it hadn't even crossed your mind. The first thing you think about is, I need a scope, which is logical. You do. That's the first thing you need. You need a scope. But after you get out there and, the first night or two of holding your rifle up all night long, trying to look through it and panning and scanning around, you realize that, your arm is hurting and it's just killing you. And you go, man, it'd be nice to have something to hold in my hand. So
that 308 that I'm shooting.
Yeah.
I tell you, and that thing it's heavy and carrying it around. Yeah. So I'm wearing that thing on a strap, even at the end of the night, I was like, man, my shoulders sore. But yeah, it's exactly right.
It is. And so, there's a lot of different options. It doesn't matter if you're shooting, traditional night vision or digital night vision. There are some sort of options in whatever category that it is you're shooting. And to be honest, there's really something in pretty much every price range. And we can even let's start with the digital stuff, because there's a lot of guys that are shooting the Sightmark Photons, the ATNX sights, and there are things that you can buy that will go right along next to those and do very well. When you start with the digital and the Generation 1 monoculars, you can get stuff all the way down to $150, $200. But the one thing I always like to tell people is there's a lot of these optics that look appealing, and you say, oh man, that's $200. I'm going to go take that and use that next to my Photon. Here's the problem: you might not see 60 yards with it, and you're going to be very frustrated. You want to make sure that whatever you get, and this is going to be true across the board in any type of handheld, you want to be able to see just as far or further than you can with your scope. And the reasoning for that is, I've been here, I've done this, I can tell you. If you've got something in your hand that'll see 100 yards and your scope will see 200, you're going to put this thing in your pocket after about 5 minutes and you're going to pull your scope back up. Because the whole time your mind's telling you, I can't, I'm missing stuff. And you probably are. So with that said, my advice is to, get some advice on it. Call me or another night vision dealer, somebody that's used all this stuff, and really pick their brain, because you want to make sure what you're getting is going to work well with whatever scope you've got. So again, there's some cheap stuff in the $150 to $200 range, but you bump up just a little bit and you get into that maybe $399 range. And you've got, like, Sightmark has got a new Sightmark Signal. I know you've been using that a good bit, and you can talk about that in a minute. Kind of tell us about it. We've got that option. Their ATN has called the Bino X or the Binox, and they are. It's actually, two eyepieces, so it's like binoculars. They're really nice. They do really well for the digital stuff. And moving on, we can go into thermal, and we can kind of start on the lower end. It's not necessarily cheap, but it's going to be lower end of what you're able to do in the image quality, and that's going to be like the Leopold LTO trackers, the Flir Scout TKs. Those are all going to be in that 500 to, well, the new LTO HD is like $999. So they're going to be in that $500 to $1,000 range, and they have their place. But if you own a thermal scope, then you're probably not going to want to use one of those next to your thermal scope, just because they're not going to see that well. But they might be a good addition to a digital scope. And then moving on from there, we can move up into, I don't like to say real thermal, but it kind of is. I mean, when you get up into the professional level, I think you're going to start somewhere with like the new Flir Breach. I know we've both done a review on that. Small, tiny little handheld unit, weighs about 7 ounces. It's a nice little unit for helmet mounting or something you just want to slip in your pocket. Then we just move into the full-size handheld thermal monoculars. Flir's got a good many. The really popular ones right now are the Pulsar line. They've got the Quantum Lights and the Helions, and these are legitimate. Put it next to your scope, and it can look exactly like your scope does, depending on which model you get. And so there is a lot that we could really jump into there about pairing up different things. But that's just kind of a rundown all the way from digital to $300 to thermal, and it just goes to as much as you want to spend.
Yeah, I think one of the first things you said, which was great advice, that you want to make sure that you get, if you are going to get a monocular, that it can see as good or as far, if not further, than your normal scope. And I think that's great advice, because you're exactly right. If you're going to be spending the money on something, it's going to be something you want to use consistently and all the time. And it can be a great tool to use that can help you identify and be able to be the best thing about it, with using something like that, a handheld. And you and I have used them for a long time now, but and a lot of different models that you talked about, you and I have used a lot. But just being able to drive down a county road and hold out a monocular.
Easy now. We're from East Texas. They're gonna think we're gonna have a gun hanging out too. So be clear. Be clear.
I've already been. The sheriff has already got on to me about hanging a rifle out there.
I know you better than that.
I know him very well, so he knows what I'm doing. He knows my truck, so if he sees me down the road, he knows to leave me alone.
But I think you're right, and I think so. Let's answer the first question, and that question is, do I need one? Is it worth it? I don't think we're not gonna give you the answer right now. You're gonna have to listen to the whole show. But I think the short answer, and Hans and I would both agree, is that yes, if you can afford it, It's absolutely a super tool to put in your toolbox. Um, and so I think we can, we'll get into a little deeper. Well, here, look, I know that when you started out, which most all of us, I'm included in that, we didn't have handheld. Just we were starting out. Either we couldn't afford it, we didn't know about it, whatever. So why don't you tell
Right.
us? I mean, your evolution of what you did before without it, and then once you started using it. And I know you've used digital and thermal. Tell me what
Right.
you think. I mean, how helpful is it? How much do you use it?
Yeah. So we're starting out without a monocular. A lot of what I do and a lot of what you do and a lot of others out there, we're walking around a lot. Which means we're carrying our rifle and all of our gear with us. We've got a rifle slung across our chest. We've got our backpacks or our packs on, and when you're walking down trails and try to raise up a rifle and scan, especially if you're in thick brush or trees, it's hard to scan sometimes when you're holding a rifle and all that stuff. Your arms get wore out trying to walk down trails all the time and
Oh
holding
yeah,
up your rifle as you're walking down a trail. And that's happened to me many times where I'm walking down a trail and it's thick brush, you barely walk through it, and you're holding up the rifle at the same time trying to maneuver around trees just to where you can see. I mean, this isn't even spotting a hog. This is just so you
right.
can see, and it's very cumbersome. It's difficult, but I mean, if that's all you have, then it's the greatest thing ever. But once you get that first, I started out. I've used the Sight Mark Signal, the digital monocular, and being able to, that was great for using over bait piles or open fields, and just spotting out real quick and seeing, just a quick scan to see if there was something out there, which was great. I've used the Flir breach. I have a lot of experience with the Flir breach and also, the Helions. So once I started using a monocular, man, I'm going to tell you, and I've got several examples, but I'll give you a couple of them. Just recently, I was walking from my truck out to a place that I hunt to quite often. This is a trail that I take that I never really hold up my rifle at all because I know that I'm headed to a spot that has a bait pile, so I'm just walking. Normally, I wouldn't raise up my rifle at all.
Right.
Wouldn't check, wouldn't, just because I've never seen anything there. Well, I've got a Helion with me, so I'm walking down. I've got that Helion on the whole time. I've got everything strapped on me. That Helion is up, and I see a coyote about 100 yards away heading in my direction. I would have never been holding up my rifle walking down this trail to head to my bait pile. If I didn't have that Helion, I would have never seen him. Never would have seen him. Never would have identified him, and was able to drop a coyote because I had my eyes on. It's having your eyes on. And when you have a helmet, a lot of people use their helmet mounts. When you have a monocular, I think it's just a fact that your eyes are going to be on more often than if you have a scope mounted on a rifle. I think that's just, it's not a scientific fact, but you talk to everybody,
It is.
and it is. You're going to have your eyes on. You're going to have that thermal monocular or that digital monocular on more than you would if you didn't have it.
Well,
So being able to see that coyote was a big thing for me. I mean, because I wouldn't have seen him without it. I wouldn't have my
yeah,
scope
well,
turned
and
on.
just to say one thing to that exact point is I tell guys once you get a handheld monocular, you will use that in a night 20 to 30 times more than you use your scope. I mean, I use my handheld monoculars every single night, and sometimes, I mean, I may not get the scope out if I don't see any hogs. I mean, I'm out there, looking, scanning my pastures, and I'm not going to turn on my rifle scope until I see something because I'm just using the handheld.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't realize how much more you're going to be looking, and then how little you're going to use your scope.
And another example was again another recent story with me having the Helion is us pulling up. Me and some buddies went out to a farm that a buddy of mine has, which is when you pull up, it's on a big hill and it opens up to about 600 acres. And we pull out, everybody's gearing up, putting their gear on, headed down to our normal. We're going to walk down to our normal spots. I get the Helion out, and I see a hog 580 yards away. Now, the Helion that I'm using right now is the XQ28. Could I tell 100% that it was a hog? I was about 95% sure. Now that's a long way, 580 yards, and
a long way.
Like, the guy that I know that owns the farm, he said, because the hog was under a deer feeder, and he said, I know for exact sure that deer feeder from here is 580 yards. So the way that I could tell is just like all the rest of us and all the rest of the people listening. You do this enough, and you're going to be able to know the mannerisms of hogs and coyotes, and you'll be able to tell the difference after a while. You just get better at doing it. So I could tell by the way it was moving that it wasn't
That's right.
it wasn't a deer. The sucker was as big; it looked like a cow, but I could tell by the way it was moving it wasn't a cow. The hog was almost 300 pounds, but I could. That was a hog that we spotted with that monocular. That again, everybody else was gearing up. I was the only one that had a monocular. They were strapping their rifles on, putting their packs on, and we were about to just start walking to some normal spots. And I have that monocular on pretty much. If I don't have my scope on, that monocular is on. And right now, that when we're using monoculars, that scope is rarely on unless we see something that we're about to shoot with, or if if you're trying to get video for something else, or do whatever. But we're always having those monoculars on, riding down roads, pulling into gates, everything. I mean, it's always on. So that's the same experience with the Flir breech. What I liked about the Flir breech was the size of it, how it could slip right in your pocket. I took my daughter out. She used the Flir breech, and she was able to watch me shoot a couple of hogs, and she thought that was a cool deal to be able to see that. So that's some of the experiences that I've had recently with why I feel like that using a thermal monocular or digital monocular, whatever, helps me personally. I'm not going to say it for everybody, but helps me personally kill more hogs.
Well, there's a couple things that I just sitting here thinking about that I want to bring up that are questions that I get asked, and I agree with everything you just said. One of the things that I'll have people say, and look, there's a debate on this. There's a couple different ways to skin this cat, but a lot of people will say, you know what? I want a really, really good handheld monocular. That way I can identify very good before I ever have to bring the scope up. And my thought is, I'm not advocating, a piece of junk handheld monocular, but what I am saying is this: I want the best scope that I can afford. The handheld, normally you're going to know. 90% of the time, even if you're talking about a less expensive thermal or one of the digitals, you're going to be able to look and you're going to get a good idea of what that is before you bring the scope up. But I want the scope to have the best image quality, and my reasoning is simple: because I can't make a mistake with a thermal monocular. But when my finger is on the trigger, that's when I want to know for 100% sure that that is a hog or that is a coyote. It's not a fawn. It's not a deer. It's not a calf. It's not a cow. When you're, if you decide you want to do this and you're going down this road, I mean, I had this conversation this week with a guy, and he said, man, he said, I've got a great scope, but I think I'm going to spend the money and get a better monocular just because I want the best image quality when I'm scanning. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to talk you out of getting a nice one, but you want to make sure you get the best scope you can afford, for that reason.
That's what a great point. Yeah. Being able to, you and I've talked about this in the past, a small deer, a small fawn laying down in the grass with its head up looks a lot like a coyote's head.
I've been on some hunts with guys and seen some near misses, on some near catastrophes and things like that. And I'm telling you, yeah, you want to be very, very careful. So anyway, that's just something to think about when you go down this path. Another thing that I get asked a lot is I've had guys that are shooting digital, and they want to know, do I need a thermal monocular? Will that help me? or vice versa. If I've got thermal, can I just get a digital monocular? And I think that works. It works well when you are shooting with digital or traditional night vision, Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3, and you've got a thermal monocular. I think that's fine. But it doesn't work the other way well, because you go right back to, if you pull up a thermal scope and you can see 500 yards, you're going to be able to see 500 yards. And you're not going to do that with, not well with digital monocular. So again, I think that it's fine to have a digital scope and a thermal handheld, but not the other way around.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Scanning with a digital monocular when there's a lot of cover around is not very easy to do. Like I said before, that's best for open fields over bait piles. But if you're in brush, we've talked about in past episodes that it throws up a real bright glare. But yeah, if you've got a thermal scope, I had a thermal scope and I was using a Sightmark signal, and it worked just fine. But vice versa, going from something else, it would be difficult.
And one more thing that I would add is that there are some benefits to digital handheld as opposed to thermal. I'm going to tell you what this is, because I'm going to admit this. I keep a digital night vision monocular on the top of my gun safe, which is where my thermal handheld sits, because there are many times that especially if part of my pastures or whatever, if it's not grazed at that time and the grass has gotten a little bit taller. When it's short grass, it's identification's a lot easier. But when that grass gets up, it gets harder, and there's a lot of times that I'll get with the thermal and I'll have something way out there, maybe 250, 300 yards, and I'll be like, I am just not sure if that's a hog or a deer or a calf or whatever, and so I'll go to the digital. And the reason is this, and a lot of times I have to put an infrared illuminator beside it, hold it. But the reason is because with digital, you can see a hog is going to show up black, and it's just going to be there. You are going to see it and identify much easier and much quicker than you will with thermal, depending on the conditions and how far away and the grass and the brush and all that. But there are times that I lay down a thermal device and pick up digital to get a clear identification before I go gear up and go stalk down there.
Yeah, and I think what we need to make clear too, people that are hunting with a digital scope, there's nothing wrong with getting a digital monocular.
No,
nothing at all.
I would highly advise something like the Sightmark signal. And I'm going to tell you something. The ATN Bino X, I have used those a long time. I do not recommend a lot of ATN products, but this is one that I really, really like. And it's nice being able to put, have something to both eyes. They are big. They're kind of bulky. I think they're really good for, sitting in a stand or a fixed location. Not necessarily so much if you're doing a ton of walking, but they work very well. That new Sightmark signal, I have been extremely impressed. I mean, it's affordable. I mean, it is affordable for what it is. And one thing I want to bring this up too, because we're going to get into this in a minute, I know. But I have a lot of guys that they say, and they get a little frustrated, and I can understand this, but they say, why is this handheld nearly the same cost as my scope? That doesn't make any sense. It's just stupid. It shouldn't be. It's just a handheld. Well, here's what you got to understand. It's the same thing as your scope. It just doesn't have the crosshairs. Yeah. I mean, it's the same technology, and oftentimes the manufacturer has had to take that same technology and put it into a smaller package. And when you take anything, especially in electronics, and just make it and package it smaller, it gets more expensive. And so it's amazing a lot of times to me they can even keep the prices as low as they do. But it's the same thing as a scope. It doesn't matter if it's thermal or digital. That image intensification unit, if it's digital, or if it's a tube based, or the thermal core, the same thing that goes inside of a scope.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's expensive, and you're just not going to be able to buy that handheld that's as good as your scope for half the price. The one more thing that keeps handhelds expensive is the fact that there just aren't as many sold. There's not near as many of those sold as there are scopes, and we all know the more you make of something, the cheaper that you can sell them.
Well, along that lines, let's talk about this. The people that say, you know what, with the design and evolution of these quick detach mounts, do I need a thermal monocular when I can just pop my scope off of my rifle and
Or
use
digital.
and scan with it and slap it back on and it'll return to zero? Do I need to spend the money when I can do that with my scope?
Okay, can I answer this one?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. I asked it. Go ahead.
Okay, you ask it, I get to answer it. Yes, you can do it. I understand the appeal. I sell scopes to guys all the time that are going to use that scope as a handheld, and it makes logical sense, and I get it. Because he says, well, look, this is or is that what you're talking about? Let me get clear on the question. Are you talking about buying an extra scope, or are you talking about using the one you've got with the quick detach?
We're going to talk about the other subject, I think, a little bit later on. But I'm talking about people that are saying they're using their scope as a monocular.
All right. No, I do. I have an opinion on everything. It may not be worth anything, but I got an opinion. Yes, you can do it, and I want to be clear. Look, Hans and I, we have done things the poor boy way for years. We are backwoods East Texans, and I am not going to sit here on my high horse and tell you how to go spend your money. So yes, you can absolutely do it. With the advent and improvement and affordability in the new quick detach mounts, from the Sightmark Photons all the way up to the highest end thermal, all this stuff returns to zero and does a great job. Yes, you can do it. My caveat is this: it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. And so here's the thing: when you take that scope off, you have to be able to put it back on your rifle in the same Picatinny slot that it came out of so that you can return to zero. And you have to do it in the dark. So I always ask guys this, because like, can I do it? Well, sure you can do it. But this is my little scenario. Can you tie your shoes? Well, yes. Can you tie your shoes in the dark? Yes. Can you tie your shoes in the dark with a bull chasing you? No, I can't do it. I'm going to be stumbling all over.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing. Maybe a hog's not chasing you, but it's the same adrenaline rush. You've got that scope in your hand. Oh my goodness, look, hog just came out of the woods at 150 yards. I've got to get this thing back on here. And you have a spike of adrenaline. Mm-hmm. I don't care how long you've been doing it. You're there to shoot hogs. Hogs came out, or coyotes. It's very hard for coyote hunters to do this. Very hard, because that's why I'm saying hogs. It's those coyotes are moving a lot too fast coming in. It's not ideal for them at all. But for hog hunters, they're immediately now adrenaline spike in the dark and trying to get that scope back on that Picatinny rail. I've done it. I can tell you, you can fumble with that thing, and the more trouble you have, the harder it gets. And it can just turn into a comedy of errors.
It's happened to me, and you talk about it when that adrenaline hits you, because if the hogs, you see them with that scope raised up, and you see them starting to trot off, you're trying to fumble, and it's happened to me. I guess I'm clumsy, because I sat there one time and I lost a hog because I was sitting there jacking with trying to get the scope back on. Now, if it would have been in the daytime sitting in my house, I could have done it like that.
Do it in a second.
There, in the heat of the moment, when I knew that I had to be in a hurry, I fumbled with it, And another thing with me, I know that the QD mounts, the quick detach, all the different ones out there, they do return it to zero. They've been tested. They do work. I hate taking my scope off my rifle because I'm OCD, and when I sight something in perfect, I don't even want anybody touching my scope. When my scope is dialed in and I feel confident with my shot, as soon as I remove that scope and put it back on, I feel a little bit less confident, even though I know it returns it close back to zero. It's something within my brain. I'm OCD, but I don't even want anybody to touch it. So I just
see, guys like me just use that as an excuse. Oh man, didn't return to zero. That's why I missed. That's why I shot over him.
That's why, in the heat of the moment of being able to put that thing back in the proper Picatinny slot, and also with me just want to have it perfect. I want to leave it on there. I don't want to mess with it, and that's really my reasoning. But like Jason said, we didn't start out hog hunting with the nicest equipment that was out there.
No.
I mean, we started out with, through all the different kinds of night vision. And, it's we've been fortunate that we've been able to upgrade over time, and we get to use good gear. But I'll tell you, all the people out there that are using all the different kinds of stuff, we've used it, and we've tried it, and we've been successful with it. And you can do it with anything that you got. Something in your bag is a lot better than nothing in your bag.
That's
I can
right.
tell you that. And anybody that tries to tell you any different, isn't really making logical sense.
No, I think that's it. And that's something that Hans and I have tried to stress. I know we talk about thermal a lot because we both use thermal. And I know this is never a dig at the guys that aren't using it, can't afford it, or don't want it. Maybe they can't afford it, don't want to buy it. Because, like I said, I'm still using a digital monocular. I still keep photons laying around, and we'll use them from time to time. This stuff is great. And the worst night vision scope on the market is probably, I don't know what the worst is. Maybe that's not the good thing to say, but
don't name names.
Yeah, I don't know what exactly the worst is. It's still better than duct taping a flashlight to the end of your barrel. I mean, you can kill a lot of stuff without having expensive stuff. And so again, I understand. There's a lot of guys that they save up the money to buy the scope, whether whatever technology it is, it's what they can afford. And mama ain't happy, and they've got it, and they're loving it. And then it's like, don't tell me I got to go buy something else for the same amount of money. I'm not telling you that.
You sound like my wife when I was telling her that I needed to get a monocular. Oh man, you should have seen that conversation.
Yeah, well, and then it's suppressors, and then it's new rifles.
I've got 2 suppressors coming, and trust me, I've already heard. Man, I've got chores for like the next year lined up. So
that's okay, because my wife was texting your wife tonight about a purse sale. That's what I heard. There was a purse sale. So,
and I can't say anything about it. When I buy my stuff. It's funny because, I was getting suppressors and she wanted a purse. And I'm like, yeah, baby, you get whatever you want to get. I don't care how much it costs. And I know it's because I'm setting myself up for the next big purchase that I want to make.
Famous last words of a fool, I think.
Yeah. Let's talk about this real quick before we wrap up the show. And that the alternative to that of what you mentioned earlier was the person that has a nice scope and they just want to buy a backup scope that they can have use as a monocular, and then they can, if they have a buddy hunt with them, they can let them use that to hunt with. So basically, I've got a good scope. I want to buy another scope that I can just use as a handheld and let my buddies use the scope whenever they come hunt with me.
Yeah, I think I'm seeing that more and more. I've got a guy right now that I'm dealing with down here in the South, and he's going to buy something probably this week and do exactly that. He's already got a Trail XP50, and he said, you know what? I'm going to buy another thermal, and I'm going to use it as a handheld, but I've got buddies that like to go with me, and they can't all necessarily afford any kind of night vision. So, we can both hunt, and when they don't go, I'll use it as a handheld. And with the, advent of the Pulsar Core RXQ30V, the Flir Thermosight Pro PTS233, both of those scopes, they're $1,900 and $2,200 respectively. And they're small. They're fairly lightweight. They are really the size of a handheld unit minus the mount, if you didn't have the mount on there. So I get it. I mean, I understand why a guy would want to do that. Does it work? Yes. Is it ideal? Probably not perfect, but it does work very well. I guess if I had to summarize it, I'd say it like this. If if you've got the money, buy a dedicated handheld. I mean, if the money's really not an object and you go, you know what, I can afford it, because I've got guys that buy a spare photon and do the same thing. And the negative with that is it's very long. I mean, those things are, about 13 inches and it's, you got to carry the thing, but it works. And
Right.
it's the same theory. They go, man, you know what though? QD rings. My buddy comes, my kids come, put it on there. So I understand. I sympathize with that. But I would say that if you can afford to buy a dedicated handheld, do it. It's more ergonomic. It's going to work better for you. It's gonna fit in your hand better. But if you want to back up buddy scope, I get it. It makes
Yeah,
sense. I can't blame you.
it does. It does make sense. I've got buddies all the time that want to go hunting with me. They don't have any type of night vision scope, and whenever I've got an extra backup one, we get a chance to hunt with them. But I tell you what, man, if I'm letting my buddy use my backup scope, I'm sure wishing that I had a monocular with
Right.
me, because
Mm-hmm.
you're basically losing one of your tools is what you're doing.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I understand it too. There's I don't it's not a bad idea at all. And with like you said, with the RXQ30V pulsar and also the Flir PTS 233, two smaller, lightweight, good thermal scopes that can pass as a spotting scope.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that's a good option. So, well, I think we covered a lot here. We talked about a lot of different monoculars. I know there's a lot of choices out there, and Jason ran through a bunch of them. Is there anything that we missed, Jason?
I don't think so. I think we've hammered this out pretty good. There's a lot of things, and we could go off and we could do individual reviews and talk about a lot of these different things. I've used all these handhelds that we've talked about, and I could, I've done some YouTube reviews on them. I know you've done on some of these,
Mm-hmm.
and I know we're going to do that in the future. We're going to do some
Yep,
reviews. We are, and there's too many to review every single one of them. We may have to lump some of this together, but you mentioned that you're using the Helion XQ28. That's a new Helion, and those things are great. They're $21.99. They are excellent.
I love it.
Very, very nice. Good image quality. They have all the same features as the Trail. Have the video recording, rechargeable battery pack, the Wi-Fi streaming to the phone app. They're really nice. I'm using the Helion. Again, these are pulsars. I keep saying just Helion, but it's pulsar Helion. I'm using the XP28, and that's the 640 by 480 core, and I really like it. I tell you what I use it for some is it's a very low magnification, wide field of view, and so sometimes I'll set it up on a tripod and actually hit the record, and then I walk forward, so it's recording me in thermal as I'm hunting, and it's just kind of like having a cameraman out there. So that's one of the reasons that I use that. I get asked a lot, do I have to have a 640 handheld? If maybe the guy's got a 640 core scope. Maybe he should do I need that? I'm a terrible salesman, but my answer is no. I think I mean, I'm using one. But I've
Yeah.
used it all. And if you've got the money and you want the best image quality, yes. But man, you can still ID 95% of the time. Again, and you're not pulling the trigger with that thermal handheld. So
Yeah, that XQ28 is 384 resolution,
and it's
and
really nice.
it's nice. I love it. Like Jason said, I set up from behind. I can record from behind while I'm taking shots on a tripod. All the same functions as the Trail, and the identification. I'm using an XP50, which is a 640 core resolution, and my monoculars are 384. I can identify just fine from. Let's just say this: I can identify with my monocular further than I'm gonna ever take a shot.
Without a doubt.
And that's exactly what I care about and what I need, and it works great. And I tell you, I would love for somebody to try to come wrestle that thing out of my hands right now. But you know what? We appreciate y'all joining us this week on the show. Jason, tell them a little bit. give them the number again so they know, and talk a little bit about people calling in.
Look, we have got some phone calls. We've got a lot of emails been coming in. We want you to call too. We like the phone calls. We like the voicemails. We've had several. We want more. And you can just call and give us your feedback. You can say that you love the show, you hate the show. Give us show
Don't say that. Don't say that.
Well, we're going to play those too, you know. But you can give us your feedback. You can give us show suggestions and ideas and just questions. If we're looking for show topics. So if you say, hey, here's a question I got. Hey, bring it on. We want to hear it. Yeah. And so call us. We really enjoy those phone calls. So that number is 903-833-4461. Again, it's 903-833-4461. And what I want people to know is we're not going to answer the phone. It goes straight to voicemail. Yeah. You can call at 4 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't matter when you call. No one is going to answer that. And you do not have to, like I said, leave your full name. We won't use that. You can just leave us your first name and, give us your feedback or ask the question. We'd love to hear from you via that method. Or send us emails. We've been getting a bunch of emails, and we'll be glad to take those too at thelatenightvisionshow@gmail.com. thelatenightvisionshow@gmail.com.
Well, you're exactly right. We get a lot of emails. We get a lot of questions. I get messages on Instagram for show topics, and they're great. But we want to hear your voice. So please call in. We want to play those recordings. We love doing the shows, the listener feedback shows, and the recordings are a big part of that. So please call in, leave your messages. Also, anything that we've talked about today, there's a man that you can talk to that can give you any answer that you want or you need. Call Jason at Outdoor Legacy Gear. His phone number is at 877-350-1818. I got that right, didn't I? Right off the top of my head.
You got it right, man.
877-350-1818. Jason at Outdoor Legacy Gear. He'll talk to you he will sit there, I promise you, and he will talk to you as long as you want to about this stuff. He talks more about night vision than anybody that I've ever met, but he'll take care of you, answer your question, take the time, and like he said, he's a terrible salesman. So he'll probably talk you into something cheaper.
I'm a terrible salesman.
If you want to find Jason, where can they find you if they want to look for you somewhere else?
YouTube, and you can always find me there. I've got a lot of reviews. Please go like and subscribe. Same thing, Instagram and Facebook. I tell you what, we really want you to go and go like the Late Night Vision Show as Instagram, but Facebook as well. We're trying to get that growing over there, and we just appreciate it if you could go out, whether it's Instagram or Facebook, like and share this stuff. We had a lot of that going on with the show last week with James O'Neill, and it gave us a lot of growth. And look, I mean, we're begging you. We like and share. We're doing this, and we want to build it up as big as we can and get as many listeners, and then we can do some more fun stuff. Hans and I are already, teasing out some ideas of some giveaways and stuff. I'm not going to say any more than that. I'm just going to leave it out there.
That's exactly right. So, and you can, like you said, find Jason Outdoor Legacy Gear on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. You can find me on Instagram at Hans ETX. That's HANS-ETX. On Instagram, on YouTube, it's the same thing, Hans ETX. I'm getting close to 2,500 subscribers, and man, a lot of work goes into the videos, but I appreciate all the feedback that comes back and all the encouragement. So it's good to see. But for Jason and I, we want to thank you again for being here, joining us this week. Pretty soon, Jason and I are going to be talking about the brand new Flir Thermosight Pro PTS 536 that is now in, and we're using them and already shooting hogs with them. We're going to be doing a full review on that soon. I don't know if we're doing it on the next show, but here coming up in the near future, we're going to be doing that. But thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining Jason. Come back and listen to us again next week, and y'all take care.